A daring escape. In the glimmering spires of the Galactic Empire's capital, Princess Valara stood on the precipice of destiny. Born into a life of privilege and power, she had long chafed under the tyrannical rule of her father, Emperor Zargan. While he sought to expand his dominion through conquest and subjugation, Valara dreamed of a galaxy where freedom and justice reigned supreme. For years, she had worked in secret, building a network of rebels and dissidents who shared her vision. From the downtrodden miners of the Zephyr colonies to the disillusioned nobles of the imperial court, Valara had cultivated allies across the stars. Her charisma and passion were infectious, and many were drawn to her cause, seeing in her a beacon of hope in a galaxy shrouded in darkness. But Valara knew that hope alone would not be enough to overthrow the Empire. She needed a plan, a bold stroke that would ignite the fires of rebellion across the galaxy. And so she had hatched a daring scheme to strike at the very heart of her father's power. The plan was audacious, bordering on reckless. Valara and her rebels would infiltrate the Imperial Palace during the annual Ascension Day celebration, when the Emperor's Guard would be focused on pomp and ceremony. They would seize control of the central command hub, broadcasting a message of revolution across the Empire. With the element of surprise and the support of the people, they would overthrow Zargan and usher in a new era of peace and equality. But even the best-laid plans can go awry. As Valara and her team made their move, they were met with fierce resistance from the Imperial Guard. Blaster fire filled the halls of the palace as the rebels fought desperately to reach their objective. Valara led the charge, her energy blade flashing as she cut through the ranks of her father's loyalists. The battle was intense, a whirlwind of chaos and destruction. Valara moved like a dancer, her every step and strike perfectly choreographed. She had trained for this moment all her life, honing her skills in secret, preparing for the day when she would lead the charge against tyranny. But the Imperial Guard were no mere minions. They were elite warriors, fanatically loyal to the Emperor and trained to the peak of martial prowess. They met the rebels with unwavering discipline, their blaster fire precise and relentless. In the end, Valara and her comrades reached the command hub, but at a terrible cost. Many of her friends and allies lay dead or dying, their blood staining the polished floors of the palace. And even as they took control of the broadcast system, Valara could hear the sound of reinforcements closing in, the thud of booted feet and the hum of energy weapons. With a heavy heart, Valara realized that their effort had been in vain. The Empire was too strong, its grip on power too tight. The rebellion had been crushed before it could even begin. Tears stung Valara's eyes as she faced the bitter truth, but even in that moment of despair, she knew she could not give up. Too much was at stake, not just for her, but for all those who suffered under the Empire's yoke. Knowing she had to flee or face certain execution, Valara fought her way to the palace hangar, her energy blade a blur of motion as she cut down any who stood in her path. In the chaos of the battle, a single starfighter stood unguarded, its sleek lines promising escape and freedom. Without hesitation, Valara leaped into the cockpit, her hands flying over the controls with practiced ease. The engines roared to life, and the ship blasted out of the hangar, leaving a trail of fire and destruction in its wake. As she broke orbit and prepared to jump to light speed, Valara's ship suddenly shuddered under a hail of laser fire. Imperial fighters had been dispatched to intercept her, and they were closing fast. Valara duped and jinked, her skills as a pilot put to the ultimate test as she sought to evade her pursuers. The dogfight was intense, a deadly dance of laser fire and missile trails. Valara's ship was fast and maneuverable, but the Imperial fighters were relentless. Her shields flared under the onslaught, warning alarms blaring in the cockpit. Gritting her teeth, Valara knew she had only one chance for survival. She had to make a blind jump, to flee to some distant corner of the galaxy where the Empire's reach did not extend. It was a desperate gamble, but it was her only hope. With a quick prayer to the gods of her people, Valara plotted a random course and engaged the hyperdrive. The stars stretched into shimmering lines as the ship hurtled into the void, leaving the pursuing fighters far behind. But something was wrong. The damage to her engines had thrown off the jump calculations. Instead of emerging in deep space, Valara's fighter was pulled out of lightspeed by the gravity well of an uncharted planet. Warning lights flashed as the ship plummeted through the atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot from the friction. Valara fought with the controls, trying desperately to level out, to find some safe place to land. But it was no use. The ground rushed up to meet her, and everything went black. When Valara awoke, she was in a world of pain. Her body was battered and broken, her ship a twisted wreck around her. Through the cracked canopy, she could see a strange, alien landscape, jagged mountains, swirling purple skies, and bizarre, twisted trees. She didn't know where she was, or how long she would survive in this hostile environment. But one thought blazed in her mind, driving her to cling to life against all odds. The rebellion lived on, in her heart and in the hearts of all those who yearned for freedom. And somehow, someway, she would find her way back to the stars to continue the fight. For Princess Valara, the battle had only just begun. Stranded on an alien world, pain lanced through every inch of Valara's body as she dragged herself from the wreckage of her starfighter. Purple blood, the hallmark of her alien physiology, seeped from countless wounds, staining the strange, blue-green grass of this unknown world. Each breath was a struggle, each movement an agony, but Valara pushed forward with grim determination. She had to find shelter, had to tend to her injuries, and gather her strength. The Empire would be hunting for her, and she needed to be ready to move when they arrived. But as she staggered through the alien landscape, Valara quickly realized the enormity of the challenge she faced. This planet was unlike anything she had seen before. The very air seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly energy, and the plants and animals were bizarre and unfamiliar. Strange, luminescent flowers bloomed in the shadows of twisted trees, their petals pulsing with an eerie inner light. Winged creatures soared through the purple sky, their cries echoing across the rugged terrain. Valara's first priority was to find water. Her suit's life support systems had been damaged in the crash, and her throat was parched and raw. She followed the contours of the land, hoping to find a stream or pond, but the going was slow and treacherous. Her injuries sapped her strength, and the planet's higher-than-standard gravity dragged at her every step. As she walked, Valara's mind raced with questions. Where was she? How far from the nearest star system? Would her emergency beacon even function on this strange world? She had no answers, only the gnawing fear that she might never escape this place. But Valara was a fighter, a survivor. She had not come this far, had not sacrificed so much, to give up now. Gritting her teeth against the pain, she pressed on, determined to find a way off this rock and back to the stars. Hours passed, and the twin suns began to set, painting the sky in vivid hues of orange and red. Exhausted and dehydrated, Valara finally spotted a glimmer of hope. A small, rocky overhang jutted out from the base of a towering cliff, offering a modicum of shelter from the elements. Summoning the last of her energy, Valara made her way to the overhang and collapsed beneath it, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The cool stone felt soothing against her feverish skin, and for a moment she allowed herself to rest, to gather her strength for the trials ahead. But even as she lay there, drifting on the edge of consciousness, Valara's keen senses detected something amiss. A faint scuffling sound, the rustle of displaced pebbles. Someone, or something, was approaching her makeshift shelter. Adrenaline surged through Valara's battered body, and she forced herself to her feet, ignoring the screaming protest of her muscles. She reached for her energy blade, but found only an empty holster, the weapon lost or destroyed in the crash. Cursing under her breath, Valara braced herself for whatever was to come. Friend or foe, she would face it head-on, as she'd have faced every challenge in her life. But nothing could have prepared her for the sight that greeted her as a figure stepped into view at the mouth of the overhang. It was a creature unlike any she had ever seen, bipedal and tall, with pale, pinkish skin and a shock of dark hair atop its head. The creature's eyes widened as it caught sight of Valara, and it raised its hands in a universal gesture of peace. "Easy there," it said, its voice deep and resonant. "I mean you no harm." Valara stared in shock, her mind reeling. The creature was speaking Galactic Standard, the common tongue of the Empire. But that was impossible. No one on this backwater planet should have knowledge of that language. "Who are you?" Valara demanded, her voice rough with exhaustion and suspicion. "What do you want?" The creature smiled, a disarming expression that crinkled the corners of its eyes. "My name is Jake," it said. "Jake Madison. I'm an explorer, a traveler from a distant star system, and from the looks of it, you could use some help." Valara hesitated, torn between caution and desperation. She was in no condition to fight, and if this Jake creature meant her harm, there was little she could do to stop him. But something in his eyes, in his gentle demeanor, made her want to trust him. "I am Princess Valara of the Galactic Empire," she said at last, drawing herself up to her full height despite the pain it caused her. "I have crashed on this planet and require assistance. If you can aid me, I would be in your debt." Jake's eyebrows shot up at the mention of the Empire, but he quickly schooled his features into a neutral expression. "Well then, Your Highness," he said with a slight bow, "it would be my honor to assist you. Let's get you patched up and back on your feet." And with that, he extended a hand to Valara, an offer of aid and friendship in a galaxy that had shown her little of either. After a moment's hesitation, Valara reached out and took it, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. It was a small gesture, but one that would change the course of both their lives forever. For in that moment, an unlikely alliance was born, one that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Empire. An unlikely alliance. As Jake tended to Valara's wounds with surprising skill and gentleness, the princess found herself studying her unlikely savior with growing curiosity. He was unlike anyone she had ever met, confident yet humble, rugged yet refined. There was a depth to him, a sense of purpose that belied his easygoing demeanor. "You said you were an explorer," Valara said as Jake applied a healing salve to a particularly nasty gash on her arm. "What brings you to this remote corner of the galaxy?" Jake smiled, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "Adventure, mostly," he said. "I've always had a taste for the unknown, for pushing the boundaries of what's possible. When I heard rumors of an uncharted planet in this sector, I couldn't resist the chance to see it for myself." Valara winced as the salve stung her wound, but she couldn't help but be impressed by Jake's fearlessness. It was a quality she'd recognized in herself, that same drive to break free of the constraints that others placed upon her. "And what did you find when you arrived?" she asked, genuinely curious. Jake's expression turned thoughtful. "Beauty," he said softly. "Wonder. A world untouched by the conflicts and politics of the wider galaxy. It's a rare thing these days." Valara nodded, understanding all too well the weight of the Empire's influence. "My people could learn much from a place like this," she mused. "From the simplicity, the harmony of it all." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Your people? The Empire?" Valara sighed, the burden of her birthright heavy on her shoulders. "Not the Empire as it is now," she clarified, "but what it could be if we could break free of my father's tyranny. That's what I fight for, what I believe in." Jake was silent for a long moment, his hand stilling on Valara's arm. When he spoke again, his voice was low and earnest. "I've seen the suffering the Empire has caused," he said. "The worlds it has crushed under its heel. If there's anything I can do to help your cause, Princess, you have my support." Valara felt a surge of emotion at his words, gratitude, relief, and something else, something warm and unfamiliar. "Thank you, Jake," she said softly. "That means more than you know." The moment was broken by a sudden, urgent beeping from Jake's wrist communicator. His eyes widened as he read the message scrolling across the small screen. "Uh-oh," he muttered. Valara tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "What is it?" Jake looked up, his expression grim. "Imperial ships just entered the system," he said. "Looks like they've tracked your crash site. We need to move now." Valara's heart raced as she struggled to her feet, ignoring the pain that shot through her body. She had hoped for more time, more of a head start, but the Empire was nothing if not relentless. "My ship," she said urgently. "We need to repair it, to get off this planet before they find us." Jake nodded, already gathering his gear. "I got some tools and spare parts in my own ship. It's not far. If we work together, we might be able to get yours flying again." Valara hesitated, the ingrained caution of a lifetime spent in the Imperial court warring with the trust she felt building for this strange human. But in the end, she knew she had no choice. Her life and the fate of the rebellion hung in the balance. "Lead the way," she said, steeling herself for the journey ahead. As they set off into the alien wilderness, Valara couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a fight for survival. It was the beginning of something greater, something that could change the face of the galaxy itself. And with Jake by her side, a steady presence in an uncertain universe, she found herself believing that anything was possible. Even hope, even victory, even love. No, Valara pushed that thought away as soon as it formed. She couldn't afford such distractions, not now, not with so much at stake. But as they walked, their steps falling into sync as naturally as if they had been partners for years, Valara couldn't help but wonder what the future might hold for her, for Jake, and for the countless billions yearning to be free. The Empire strikes back. The trek to Jake's ship was arduous, a test of endurance for Valara's battered body and indomitable spirit. The alien landscape seemed to shift and change around them. One moment a tranquil forest of shimmering leaves, the next a treacherous labyrinth of jagged rock and yawning chasms. Through it all, Jake remained a steadfast presence at Valara's side, his strong hand ready to catch her whenever she stumbled, his easy smile a beacon of hope in the gathering darkness. They talked as they walked, sharing stories of their pasts, their dreams for the future. Valara learned of Jake's homeworld, a place of soaring cities and vast oceans, where the people had long ago cast off the shackles of tyranny and embraced the ideals of freedom and equality. She listened in wonder as he described the marvels of human technology, the great starships that could cross the galaxy in the blink of an eye, the miraculous medicines that could heal any wound. In turn, Valara shared her own story, the lonely childhood in the gilded cage of the Imperial Palace, the gradual awakening of her conscience as she witnessed the cruelty and injustice of her father's rule. She spoke of the secret meetings, the whispered plans, the slow, patient building of a resistance movement that spanned the stars. And as they talked, a bond formed between them, an understanding that transcended the vast differences of their species and cultures. They were kindred spirits, two souls united by a common cause, a shared yearning for a better world. But their momentary peace was shattered by the sudden, ominous roar of engines overhead. Valara's head snapped up, her eyes widening in horror as she saw the unmistakable silhouette of an Imperial dropship descending through the atmosphere. "They found us," she whispered, fear and determination warring in her voice. Jake's jaw tightened, his hand dropping to the blaster at his hip. "Not if I can help it," he growled. "Come on, we're almost to my ship." They broke into a run, racing against time and the inexorable advance of the Empire. The dropship grew larger in the sky, its shadow falling over them like a shroud of doom. And then, like a miracle, they broke through the trees and into a clearing, and there it was, Jake's ship, a sleek, silver craft that seemed to glow with an inner light. Valara had never seen anything like it, a vessel that looked more like a work of art than a machine of war. Quickly, Jake urged, his fingers flying over the control panel to lower the boarding ramp. "We don't have much time." But even as they rushed aboard, the ground shook with the impact of the dropship's landing, and the air filled with the ominous hum of Imperial blasters powering up. Jake threw himself into the pilot's seat, his hands a blur of motion on the controls. The ship's engines roared to life, and Valara felt a surge of hope. They were going to make it, they were going to escape. And then, with a sickening lurch, the ship shuddered and went still, caught in the implacable grip of an Imperial tractor beam. "No," Jake whispered, his face ashen. "No, no, no." Valara's heart sank as she realized the truth. They were trapped, helpless, at the mercy of the Empire. The comms crackled to life, and a voice that haunted Valara's nightmares filled the cabin, cold and cruel and dripping with malice. "Princess Valara," it said, and she could almost see the sneering face of General Kraz, her father's most ruthless enforcer. "You have led us on quite the chase. But now your little rebellion is at an end. Surrender, and your death will be quick and painless. Resist, and, well, I'm sure you can imagine the consequences." Valara's hands clenched into fists, her nails biting into her palms. She looked to Jake, saw the despair and the defiance warring in his eyes, and made her decision. "Never," she said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "We will never surrender. We will fight you to our last breath, and even in death, we will be free." There was a moment of silence, and then Kraz's voice returned, cold and mocking. "So be it," he said. "Prepare to be boarded." Jake's hand found Valara's, his fingers interlacing with hers. "Together?" he asked, his voice a whisper. Valara nodded, a fierce, proud smile curving her lips. "Together," she agreed. And as the Imperial troops breached the airlock, as the sound of blaster fire and screams filled the air, Valara and Jake stood side by side, ready to face their fate. For in that moment, they were more than just a princess and an explorer, more than just two people caught in the crosshairs of galactic conflict. They were a symbol, a beacon of hope for all those who yearned for freedom. And even in the face of overwhelming odds, even in the darkest hour, hope could never be extinguished. A new hope. The battle was fierce, a whirlwind of laser fire and desperate hand-to-hand combat in the cramped confines of Jake's ship. Valara and Jake fought like demons, their movements perfectly synchronized, their determination unbreakable. But for all their skill and courage, they were hopelessly outnumbered. One by one, the Imperial troops fell, but not without cost. Jake cried out in pain as a blaster bolt seared his shoulder, and Valara felt the white-hot agony of a vibrock knife slicing into her thigh. In the end, they found themselves cornered in the ship's engine room, battered and bleeding, their weapons drained of power. General Kraz stepped forward, his face a mask of cruel triumph. "Your rebellion is over," he sneered, leveling his blaster at Valara's heart. "Your sacrifice is meaningless. The Empire will endure, as it always has, and your pathetic dreams of freedom will die with you." Valara lifted her chin, her eyes blazing with an unconquerable fire. "You're wrong," she said, her voice steady despite the pain that racked her body. "Our sacrifice is everything. It's a spark, a flame that will ignite the hearts of billions. You can kill us, but you can't kill what we stand for. Hope will always rise from the ashes of tyranny." Kraz snarled, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Pretty words," he spat. "Let's see how much comfort they bring you in death." But even as he spoke, a sudden blinding light filled the engine room, a light so pure and radiant that it seemed to wash away all the darkness and despair. Kraz and his troops cried out in shock and pain, shielding their eyes from the unbearable brightness. And in that moment, a figure appeared, tall and regal, clad in shimmering robes that flowed like liquid starlight. Valara gasped, her eyes widening in wonder and recognition. "Mother," she whispered, scarcely able to believe what she was seeing. The figure smiled, a smile of infinite love and wisdom. "My daughter," she said, her voice a celestial symphony. "You have proven yourself worthy of your birthright. The ancient power of our people flows through your veins, a power that can shatter the chains of oppression and light the way to a new dawn." She stretched out her hand, and Valara felt a surge of energy coursing through her, healing her wounds, filling her with a strength and clarity she had never known. Beside her, Jake too was bathed in the ethereal glow, his injuries vanishing, his spirit renewed. And with that power came understanding, a sudden crystalline awareness of her true destiny. Valara was more than just a princess, more than just a rebel. She was a conduit, a vessel for a force greater than any one being, a force that could reshape the very fabric of the universe. She turned to face Kraz and his troops, who cowered before the majesty of her presence. "Lay down your weapons," she commanded, her voice ringing with an authority that brooked no defiance. "The Empire's reign of terror is at an end. A new era begins today, an era of peace, of justice, of unity." To her amazement, the Imperial soldiers obeyed, their blasters clattering to the floor, their faces slack with awe and wonder. Kraz alone remained defiant, his eyes smoldering with hatred and fear. "This changes nothing," he hissed. "The Emperor will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. You will never know a moment's peace." Valara shook her head, a look of profound sadness and compassion on her face. "You are a prisoner, Kraz," she said softly. "A prisoner of your own fear and hatred, but I offer you a chance at redemption. Join us and be part of something greater than yourself. Help us build a galaxy where no one need live in fear, where every being can reach their fullest potential." For a long, tense moment, Kraz wavered, his resolve crumbling in the face of Valara's overwhelming compassion. But in the end, the darkness in his heart was too deep, too entrenched. With a snarl of rage and despair, he raised his blaster, aiming it at Valara's face. But before he could pull the trigger, Jake was there, his hand flashing out, knocking the weapon aside. The blaster discharged harmlessly into the ceiling, and Kraz crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Valara turned to Jake, her eyes shining with gratitude and something deeper, something that made his heart skip a beat. "Thank you," she said simply. Jake shook his head, a rueful smile playing on his lips. "I should be thanking you," he said. "You saved us all, Valara. You showed me that there's more to life than just running and hiding. You gave me something to believe in." Valara took his hand, her fingers warm and strong. "We gave each other something to believe in," she corrected gently, "something worth fighting for." Together, they stepped over the fallen bodies of the Imperial troops, walking out into the sunlight of a new day, a new beginning. In the distance, they could see the glimmering spires of a great city rising from the wilderness, a city that had once been a bastion of the Empire's power, but would now become a beacon of hope for all the oppressed peoples of the galaxy. There was much work to be done, many battles yet to be fought. But Valara and Jake knew that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead side by side, bound by a love and a shared purpose that transcended all boundaries. For they had seen the power of hope, the indomitable resilience of the sentient spirit. And in a galaxy too long shrouded in darkness, that light would guide them home. The end.